Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that digs through piles of information so you don't have to, bringing you what you really need to know. Today, we're getting into something huge. Something that, well, touches pretty much every part of our lives now. Our digital world. I mean, just think about it for a second. We're always connected, right? Information is instant. Convenience like never before. It really is incredible. But under that smooth, shiny surface, there's another side. A darker one, maybe. Hidden hazards that are quietly messing with our minds, our well-being.
That's spot on. And for this deep dive, we're going to unpack something really interesting, a new framework. It's called Shalaby's Classification for Digital Hazards. And this isn't just, cybersecurity tips or worrying about screen time. Not just that, it's a really deep, systematic look at both the digital and the cognitive AI hazards. The ones popping up from this super complex connected world we're building. It's about understanding the subtle ways technology is actually changing us, sometimes profound ways.
Okay, so our mission here today is to really categorize and get a handle on these evolving risks across different dimensions. And there's a big focus on protecting younger minds, but honestly, this stuff affects all of us. Think of this as your shortcut, your guide to understanding what's actually happening behind the screens we stare at all day. We really want to give you the insights to navigate this digital space more safely, more consciously.
And it's so important we talk about this now, because in this digital age, things are moving so fast. These hazards, they're a real threat. Especially, like you said, for younger generations. They're growing up completely immersed in it. And here's a really interesting twist, a paradox almost. The digital economy needs talent, right? Human talent. But at the same time, it seems to be creating negative impacts, especially on young people. And now, with general artificial intelligence, GAI, looming, AI that could potentially do any intellectual task a human can.
Oh, okay.
There's this added layer of potential mass job loss. That just ramps up the pressure even more.
Wow. And it feels like for a lot of these deeper problems, the starting point, the gateway maybe, is often digital addiction.
Yeah.
You're saying it's not just like a bad habit, it's more like a preconditioning thing.
Yeah.
It opens the door for worse cognitive stuff.
Exactly. Think of it as setting the stage. It's this excessive reliance on devices that starts to really impact basic cognitive functions. We're talking attention span, memory, how you make decisions. It often leads to that feeling of just being overwhelmed, cognitive overload. Your brain just can't process it all.
Right, like drinking from a fire hose. I get that. And what's really hitting me here is how this addiction doesn't just mess with focus, but it seems to unlock or worsen social and emotional issues. Is that the link?
That's a crucial link, because it absolutely exacerbates things like anxiety and depression. It undermines your overall mental well-being. And yes, it makes you more susceptible to what the framework calls AI-induced cognitive challenges. If your brain's already wired for that constant stimulation, those quick hits of dopamine from notifications and likes, it becomes much more vulnerable to the kind of subtle influence AI systems can exert.
Okay, so if digital addiction is like this vulnerability we already have, what happens when AI systems interact with that? Does AI just make the addiction worse, or does it create totally new problems?
That's a really important question. And it leads us straight into these cognitive AI hazards. Because, yes, AI systems, they can mimic human thinking.
Right.
And they can exploit those very vulnerabilities we were just talking about. Research shows, for example, AI algorithms can subtly perpetuate bias, discrimination, amplifying inequalities we already have in society, jobs, loans, even justice. And then there's the reliance factor. Studies show that leaning too heavily on AI for complex decisions, it can actually make us complacent. Our own judgment skills can start to decline. So it forces you to ask, right? As tech gets smarter, are we paradoxically getting dumber? Or at least are some core human skills eroding?
It really does echo that historical pattern, doesn't it? Like, calculators, great tool, sure. But we definitely lost some mental math skills as a society. And now the worry is that integrating this massive AI could speed up the erosion of really essential human stuff. Creativity, critical thinking, empathy even. We might just become more and more dependent.
And this is precisely why the study argues that just relying on laws and policies isn't enough. It might be too slow, too reactive. There's a real pressing need to protect users directly by actually building universal safety standards into the AI and digital tech itself.
Build it in from the start.
From the ground up, not just patch problems later.
Okay. So if this is the landscape, this digital minefield, Shalaby's classification is like the most detailed map we have so far. It doesn't just list dangers, it breaks down how they hit us. systematically,
Like so.
which seems super important because, yeah, people are paying more attention, but there hasn't really been a solid, comprehensive way to categorize all these different hazards.
Precisely. This framework gives us that systematic tool to really assess the full impact AI, digital tech, on our behavior, on our cognition. It lays out 7 main categories. Think of it as a roadmap: pathophysiology, technical-related source, user interface technology, digital content, algorithm, modification factors, and finally, mitigation measures. It's really trying to capture the whole picture, a 360-degree view.
All right, let's dive into the first one then. Category I, pathophysiology. Heavy word, but basically how these digital hazards physically and mentally affect us, right?
Exactly, how they get under our skin literally.
The first one listed is Technostress. I think a lot of us feel this, but what's actually happening inside when we experience it?
Yeah, Technostress is this complex psychological thing. Comes from just being constantly plugged in. It's that feeling of overload, anxiety, constant interruption.
Mm-hmm.
Internally, it's like your body's stress response system,
Mm-hmm.
the fight or flight, is stuck in the on position. Low gear, maybe, but always on. This messes with your autonomic nervous system, leads to things like increased heart rate, higher cortisol levels. That's the main stress hormone. Psychologically, it's that email anxiety, or notification fatigue. It just drains your attention constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And neurologically, this is where it gets more serious. It can actually alter how key brain chemicals work. Dopamine, serotonin signaling. This can potentially lead to chronic mood issues like depression. So Technostress isn't just feeling frazzled, it's potentially rewiring things.
Wow. That's pretty unsettling how deep it goes. Okay, and then digital addiction. You mentioned it earlier. How does its pathophysiology fit in?
Right, digital addiction. This is that compulsive, uncontrollable urge. You just have to check the phone, play the game, scroll the feed. What's happening in the brain is fascinatingly similar to substance addiction. Actual neurobiological changes. Dopamine release plays a huge role reinforcing those compulsive loops. Every notification, every win in a game is a little dopamine hit. Trains your brain to want more.
Like a slot machine.
Very much like that.
Okay.
And it negatively impacts mental health, often showing up alongside anxiety and depression. It impairs attention, impulse control. Neurologically, it can physically alter brain structure and function over time, affecting reward pathways, decision-making areas. The signs are often clear. Being preoccupied with digital stuff, losing interest in real-world hobbies, feeling anxious or irritable when you can't get online withdrawal symptoms. And the complications can be serious. Physical health declines, relationships suffer. It's a subtle hijacking, often by design. App designers know how to trigger that dopamine.
Okay, and the third part of this first category, cognitive disruption. How is that distinct from technostress or addiction? What does it look like day to day?
Cognitive disruption is more about the direct hits to your thinking abilities, impairments in attention, memory, decision-making, all stemming from digital exposure. Neurobiologically, it involves changes that basically make your brain less efficient, less resilient. Often it's a result of just constant information overload and decision fatigue. One really interesting point here is how it can reduce critical thinking. If you're always consuming info fast, bite-sized chunks.
You don't stop to think deeply.
Exactly. Are we losing that ability to really ponder, to assess critically? It's a valid concern. And then you have the ethical side. AI-driven decisions creating new dilemmas. Algorithmic bias in hiring, for example. Or the ethics of self-driving cars. Behaviorally, you might see increased impulsivity or just being constantly easily distracted by digital things.
Makes you wonder if the tools themselves, the devices and apps, are part of the hazard source?
Oh, absolutely. They're intrinsically linked. Which brings us perfectly to category 2, technical-related source. This is about the actual hardware and software we use. Different device types carry different risks, right? Smartphones, tablets, gaming consoles, their immersive nature, their constant availability makes them prime candidates for inducing addiction.
Right.
And then there's the physical toll, prolonged use of any device. Ergonomics, neck strain, neck-eye fatigue. It's real. Plus, IoT devices, the Internet of Things. Smart speakers, fitness trackers, even smart appliances. They raise huge privacy flags because they collect so much data, often quietly in the background.
And it's not just the physical devices, is it? The apps themselves, they feel designed to keep you hooked.
They often are. That's the hazards across application types. Social media platforms, for instance, are masters of cognitive overload. Constant notifications, infinite scrolling feeds. Gaming and social media apps deploy sophisticated psychological tactics. Variable rewards, social pressure, FOMO, fear of missing out, all designed to maximize engagement, which can easily tip into addiction. And even though digital communication connects us, relying too heavily on it can paradoxically lead to less face-to-face interaction, more social isolation. It's one of the costs.
So it's not just what we see, but how we interact with it. That sounds like category 3, user interface technology. What about those really immersive techs like VR and AR, virtual and augmented reality?
Right. Those interfaces can significantly alter cognition because they provide such rich sensory experiences.
Yeah.
They can sometimes lead to feelings of dissociation, like you're disconnected from reality, or even altered spatial perception. And because they can be so intense, there's potential impact on mental health, maybe heightening anxiety for some users. It's a whole different level of digital immersion.
Okay, but what about the everyday stuff? Our desktops, our smartphones, the non-immersive interfaces we spend hours on?
Yeah, even though they're less immersive in that VR sense, users still battle digital fatigue, reduced attention spans from staring at screens all day, the constant barrage of digital stimuli. It all adds up to cognitive overload and stress from just being digitally on all the time, that constant hum.
And looking ahead, the framework mentions things like quantum technology. How does that fit into digital hazards?
That's looking at future risks, and it's a big one. Quantum computing has the potential to basically break most of the encryption we rely on today. If that happens without equally strong quantum-resistant security measures in place, well, the risk of massive data breaches, cyber attacks affecting everything from banking to national security, it becomes unprecedented.
Oh, quite a thought.
It really highlights the need for proactive safety development alongside the tech.
And then there's humanoid robotics. Feels like sci-fi, but it's getting closer. What are the hazards there?
With humanoid robots, you're looking at hazards tied to how we interact with machines that look and act increasingly human. There are immediate ethical questions. How much autonomy should they have? How do we ensure their decisions are safe, ethical? But then there are the broader societal impacts. Job displacement is a big one, and just fundamental changes in how humans relate to each other, once we're also relating to highly advanced human-like machines.
Okay, so we've covered the toll on body and mind, the devices, the interfaces. Now, category 4, digital content, what we actually consume. What's the deal with intense genres?
Right, intense genres. Think action, horror, sexual or seductive content, even high-stakes adventure. This kind of content is often crafted very specifically, uses powerful storytelling tricks, strong sensor triggers, visuals, sound to really grab you, engage you deeply. And by doing that, it directly influences emotions, perceptions, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. Think how a jump scare works or how a dramatic scene pulls at your heartstrings.
And beyond those specific genres, just the sheer amount and nature of information online.
Exactly. That's the information effect. It's not just the genre, it's the info environment itself. You've got misinformation, just plain false or misleading stuff. Fake news, distorted claims, it messes with factual understanding, leads to bad decisions. But then there's also hyperinformation. Just too much. The sheer volume is overwhelming, leads to information overload, analysis paralysis. And this overload contributes to filter bubbles, where algorithms only show you things they think you'll like based on your past clicks.
Right, the echo chamber.
Precisely. It limits your exposure to different viewpoints. You get trapped in your own perspective without even realizing it. And the way content is often presented, quick bites, easily consumable, definitely seems to shorten attention spans. Emotionally charged content hits our well-being. Persuasive content, advertising, can change behavior subtly.
So much of this feels driven by something we don't see, that unseen hand, the algorithm, which is category V. According to the algorithm, we're talking AI algorithms, maybe even AGI here. What are the big risks?
You nailed it. It is an unseen hand, constantly shaping what we see, what we think, what we do online. And the risks here are significant, especially with AI and the prospect of AGI. First, privacy. Massive data profiling happens constantly. For ads, for recommendations, you can feel creepy, manipulative. Then, algorithmic bias. We touched on this. AI learns from data. If that data reflects historical biases, the AI learns those biases too. This can reinforce inequality in really important areas. Job applications, loan approvals, even predicting crime. Then there are cognitive implications. AI processes info differently than we do. Super efficient, maybe, but it lacks human context, nuance, maybe creativity. And how does relying on that change our thinking? And with AGI, artificial general intelligence. Well, that brings up potential existential risks. The idea of superintelligence that might not share human values or goals. Could it alter society fundamentally? Could it pose a threat? These are serious long-term questions.
That's heavy stuff. And it really drives home how widespread these issues are. But who gets affected most? And how? I guess it's not the same for everyone.
Definitely not. It's not one size fits all. That's why category 6 is modification factors. These are the variables that change the impact. Age is a massive one. Kids. They're vulnerable to predators, bad content, and digital overload can genuinely affect brain development. Teenagers, highly susceptible to digital addiction, cyberbullying, the mental health pressures of social media comparison culture, and older adults. They might struggle with digital literacy, making them targets for online scams. And ironically, technology meant to connect can sometimes increase their social isolation if they can't use it effectively.
A different minefield for each age group. What about culture? Does that change things?
Hugely. Culture shapes everything. Attitudes towards privacy, for example, how quickly new tech gets adopted, even online safety practices. Think individualistic versus collectivist societies. They might approach online sharing or data security very differently. These norms directly influence exposure and vulnerability.
In policy, are the rules keeping up?
Well, policy tries. You have regulations like GDPR in Europe trying to protect user data, efforts to create ethical AI guidelines. But the huge challenge is enforcement. And just the sheer speed of tech innovation, regulation almost always lags behind. It's like trying to regulate the wind sometimes.
What about gender? Any differences there?
Yes, there are observed gender disparities, differences in digital literacy sometimes. Online harassment risks are often higher for women and marginalized genders. And even addiction patterns can differ. Some studies suggest males might be more drawn to gaming addiction, females perhaps more to social media addictions, statistically speaking.
And I guess where you stand socioeconomically, social status, that must play a role too, the digital divide.
A critical role. Social status impacts access to technology in the first place, digital skills development, and, crucially, exposure to online risks. It can worsen digital exclusion and deepen existing social inequalities. And finally, just sheer exposure time, how often, how long you're plugged in, it significantly modifies the impact. More time generally equals higher risk of addiction, cognitive fatigue, and those long-term changes to behavior and thinking.
Okay, so we have this incredibly detailed, maybe slightly terrifying map of hazards. What on earth can we actually do about it? That brings us to the last category, category 7, mitigation measures. What are the solutions?
Right, the what can we do part, mitigation. It breaks down into two mainstreams, technical solutions and non-technical ones, and both operate at the individual level and the broader policy level. On the technical side, for individuals, things like improving digital literacy, knowing how this stuff works, using privacy settings effectively, screen time management tools, maybe even adaptive AI that adjusts to reduce harm. At the policy level, technical measures include strong data protection laws like GDPR, robust cybersecurity policies for organizations, and developing clear ethical AI guidelines and standards.
Okay, that's the tech side. What about the non-technical? What can we do as people and what can society do?
Good question. Non-technically, as individuals. Adopting healthier digital habits, what some call digital well-being practices, actively cultivating critical thinking skills, media literacy, questioning what you see online, also mindfulness, stress management techniques to counter that overload and technostress we talked about. At the policy or societal level, we need strong education and public awareness campaigns, social and cultural interventions that promote healthier tech use, and really targeted support for those vulnerable groups who face the biggest risks.
You know, looking at this whole classification, it really throws one thing into sharp relief for me, this huge gap.
Absolutely. That's the core challenge highlighted in the study, this critical disparity. Tech innovation moves at lightning speed, right? Exponentially, almost. But the scientific research into the hazards, that lags way behind. And the measures to actually combat the hazards, technical or non-technical, they tend to be developed slowly and implemented even slower. We're constantly playing catch-up. The gap keeps widening.
So the big question then is, how do we possibly bridge that gap? It feels like we need something just as fast, just as adaptive as the tech itself.
And that's exactly where the study proposes a really innovative solution, an AI-based risk scoring system. For individual users, imagine a system running with your consent. Obviously, that monitors how you interact digitally. It would then quantify your personal risk level based on this very classification framework we've been discussing. It would show you that risk transparently. And then, crucially, offer personalized recommendations like, hey, maybe dial back screen time, or take more breaks, or be aware of this type of content. It could even track your risk over time, helping you adjust strategies. The idea is to use AI's speed and analytical power for continuous monitoring and assessment to make safety more impactful, more proactive, and maybe foster better collaboration between users, tech companies, policymakers.
So it's kind of like fighting fire with fire. Using AI to help manage the risks of AI and digital tech?
In a way, yes. That's the ultimate recommendation, really.
Yeah.
A strong case for integrating AI automated, built-in safety standards right into the design and deployment of new technologies. Make safety and ethics a core part of the innovation process itself, not an afterthought. Be proactive, not just reactive after the harm is done.
Wow. Okay, so there it is. The sheer scope of these digital and cognitive AI hazards mapped out by Shalaby's classification, it's a
Huh.
lot. But understanding it, really grasping the different facets, that feels like the essential first step for protecting ourselves and definitely for protecting future generations.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember, you listening right now, you're not just passively consuming this technology. You're an active participant. You have the power to make informed choices about your own use, and you have a voice to advocate for safer, more ethical technology.
And here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. We're heading into a future where the very intelligence we're creating AI might actually be our best tool for navigating the dangers that intelligence itself creates. But what does that mean for your own critical thinking, your autonomy? When we start relying on AI to tell us how AI is affecting our cognition, how do you personally make sure that as technology rockets forward, your human potential, your creativity, your empathy, your critical thought keeps flourishing, keeps growing instead of eroding away? Something to definitely mull over next time you pick up that phone or log onto that computer.